It's an old tragic story. Many potentially great Pokemon are held back from success by just not having the moves they needed. But then there are those strange cases of Pokemon which are utterly overflowing with great moves, yet are absolutely terrible. Today we're looking at terrible Pokemon with godlike Movepools, and we're jumping right in with a variant on a Gen 7 starter, Hisuian Decidueye. Hisuian Decidueye already has an embarrassment of riches, a wealth of great moves it can't possibly fit into not just one set, but the several different types of sets it can run. And on top of that, its status as a regional form of a starter Pokemon means it gets an incredible signature move in the form of triple arrows. This is a move which will single-handedly elevate the move pool of just about any Pokemon that can reasonably use it. And the half-fighting base 112 attack Hisuian Decidueye is of course an ideal candidate for this physical fighting move whose strong yet not overwhelming 90 base power bellies a ridiculous amount of powerful secondary effects. Its high critical hit rate is only the start, as it's also flanked by a stunning 50% defense drop rate. This alone would consistently complicate the task of switching into it defensively, but then you also have the daunting task of taking it on one-on-one, where if the drops aren't going to be a factor, then the 30% flinch rate very well might be. Oh, and you can't fend it off with a ghost type's fighting immunity either, because Hisuian Decidueye's scrappy ability renders that moot. That's still just the beginning too. For more instant power, Hisuian Decidueye also has close combat and the flexibility to run double fighting stab on the same set, flanked by Leaf Blade for a synergistic grass fighting dual stab combination, recalling the mighty Breloom, and like Breloom, Hisuian Decidueye can boost these stabs further with Swords Dance, but once you get beyond Swords Dance and stabs, Hisuian Decidueye also has several other high-impact offensive moves that Breloom would be brutally envious of. Knockoff and U-Turn are among the best in the game, Brave Bird carries immensely powerful coverage for grass and bug types, and Sucker Punch is absolutely amazing priority that ensures Psychics can't easily revenge kill it. To a lesser extent, Shadow Sneak functions similarly. It also has Taunt to really ruin opposing defensive Pokemon relying on utility moves. That's just its offensive move pool too. Hisuian Decidueye has great natural bulk alongside a bevy of useful resists, and what do you know, it's got solid utility moves to go with it. Not only does it have the reliable recovery of Roost, but in singles it has the hazard removal of Defog, while in doubles it can support an ally with Helping Hand's power boost. These types of sets also love Knockoff and U-Turn just as much as the offensive ones, so seeing as Hisuian Decidueye is absolutely overflowing with options, lending itself to the possibility of several different types of sets, what gives? Well, it's just so slow. It makes Breloom at base 70 look like a speedster. It's not quite that base 60 automatically makes it unviable. After all, Tyranitar itself is only base 61, while the incredibly dangerous Wallbreaker Crawdon sits at an even worse base 55, but base 60 is too slow for what Hisuian Decidueye wants to do. It's got great offense and solid support options, but the offense doesn't automatically translate to KOs at a level sufficient to overcome the speed, nor is the support impactful enough. As nasty as Triple Arrows is on paper, it'll never really get out of hand or even go too far at all, since the opponent will always have the option to play around it with speed, the lack of which also means Hisuian Decidueye doesn't really get to make the most of Triple Arrows, as it's not outrunning enough to take advantage of the 30% flinch rate. It's so slow that even Choice Scarf can only do so much. Now for another grass type in Scovillain, before it got a Mega anyway. But before we go into the next section, here's a word from our sponsor, Raycon. Summer is here and that means more outdoor activity. I can't think of a better set of headphones to go with my outdoor walks than Raycon's bone conduction headphones. These headphones are especially good for active people because they are lightweight and send sound through vibrations in the bones, helping your ears hear your favorite music or podcasts while also hearing the world around you. They are very safe while still keeping you focused on your movement. And that's awesome for me because I go for walks every day, but I like to listen to my favorite podcasts. With the bone conduction headphones, I never have to worry about my surroundings since I can still hear them. I also literally never do any chores without listening to something, and I put on my Raycons before getting started every day. And as with all of their products, all Raycons are the most affordable and high quality in the audio market. They are also waterproof, which is great for people who work out or if it rains, and they are dustproof. Their battery life is also amazing, as the bone conduction headphones in particular run for 13 hours and charge extremely fast. And if you're still skeptical about Raycon, they offer a 30-day happiness guarantee. The bone conduction headphones are perfect for your fitness routine. So if you want some sick new headphones and also support the channel to help us produce more content, you can go to buyraycon.com/FSGBC to get 20% off the bone conduction headphones. Thank you so much to Raycon for sponsoring this video. Mega Skullvillain is a much needed upgrade, no doubt about it. It might even be one of the best megas in the Champions meta currently. In fact, it's such a huge upgrade, we almost forgot how awful its base form was. Despite having such a tremendously synergistic move pool stemming from its unique type combination, fire and grass hitting many of each other's resists super effectively is just the start of it. More overlooked is its long coveted combination of two moves that alone tend to create niches, let alone the possibility of using them together: Leech Seed and Will-O-Wisp. Leech and Wisp together had been available since Gen 6 on Gourgeist and Trevenant, but they were generally passive utility Pokemon. Skullvillain had these moves and great offensive potential, which theoretically would bring the most out of their status as among the best moves in the game. Leech Seed is excellent for playing offense and defense simultaneously, an ideal combination, and is incredibly easy to spam, not just for how valuable it is, but for how it's only blocked by opposing grass types, which isn't a problem with Skullvillain's Fire Stab in tow. It's the same premise as Abomasol's Ice Stab, making it an excellent Leech Seeder, except Abomasnow doesn't also dish out one of the best statuses in the game. Burn no longer does 12.5% per turn as it did from Gens 2 to 6, but the 6.25 is still useful, as is having attack and only stopped by fire types, which are not immune to Leech Seed. Well, except Skullvillain. In fact, other than Magic Guard Pokemon, it's the only Pokemon in the game completely immune to its own Leech Seed Will-O-Wisp combo. Having two such spammable, impactful moves that complement each other so well is wonderful, and they're just the support moves, as you could say the same thing about its synergistic stab duo. With Overheat and Leaf Storm, it effectively has two different types of stab Draco Meteor, which is amazing in its own right. The only type to resist both is Dragon, and while dragons aren't immune to Leech Seed or Will-O-Wisp, nor do any pack Magic Guard. Skullvillain had more stabs to work with too. The extra healing of Giga Drain, the greater consistency of Flamethrower, it seemed like pretty much all it needed. The possibilities for Skullvillain sets taking advantage of such synergistic stabs were tremendous, but while it might have succeeded off the inherent strengths of its traits in an earlier generation, at this stage in the game it was overwhelmed by its lack of speed and bulk. It was certainly more decent under the sun, as Chlorophyll doubling its speed went a long way and unlocked Stab Solar Beam for it, but even so, at its best, it was still unmistakably a very lower tier Pokemon. With Sun being broken and thus banned, Sunless Skullvillain became, despite having such a powerfully distinctive move pool, one of the very worst Pokemon in the game. Next, we have two such afflicted Pokemon with Haxorus and Druddigon. These Unnovan dragons were introduced at the apex of the Dragon Age with no fairy types to interfere with their fun, but even fairy types wouldn't particularly enjoy the prospect of answering these two, in large part thanks to their move pools. Haxorus has Poison Jab and Iron Head, like most other dragons, yet it's not just its gargantuan attack that makes it more threatening with them, but Swords Dance, which far more than the Dragon Dance also in Hax's move pool, allows it to threaten one-hit KOs against bulkier fairy type targets. Even the initially stronger Kyurem Black can't quite accomplish this. Meanwhile, Druddigon ups the ante in terms of poison coverage. Rather than Poison Jab's 80 base power, it's got the massive 120 base power of Gunk Shot for much greater instant threat, and that's before taking into account the huge boost it gets from sheer force, which can potentially be pushed even further with recoil-free Life Orb, making it so strong that it always cleanly one-hit KOs even physically defensive Clefable. This is an absolutely incredible trait for a dragon type to have, and their move pools go much further than being better equipped than the average dragon at dispatching fairy types. As previously mentioned, Haxorus packs both Swords Dance and Dragon Dance, and can feasibly fit them both on the same set. It also has Taunt, allowing it to shut down its primary nemesis, Skarmory. This alone is pretty much all it needs. Yet as the gens go on, Haxorus gets even more. In Gen 8, it gets Scale Shot for stab and speed boosting simultaneously, as well as the power and coverage of close combat, and even the incredible priority of First Impression, with the latter two fitting beautifully on a Choice Band variant. Druddigon also has coverage galore, though of a different kind, and it supplants said coverage with tremendous utility as well. It had two excellent dark type moves in Sucker Punch's powerful priority and Pursuit's trapping, while unleashing fire coverage on the physical side, with Fire Punch on Choice Band sets and Flamethrower on mixed variants, with Sheer Force and Life Force boosts sufficiently strengthening it far past the limitation of its low special attack. It also enjoyed Thunder Punch's Sheer Force boosted coverage against waters. Druddigon also had two of the most impactful utility moves in the game, the Essential Hazard Stealth Rock and the brutal hinders of Paralysis from Glare, which was especially useful since as a normal type move, it could also paralyze grounds. And yet, for all their great options, Haxorus and Druddigon languish below standard play. Druddigon at least makes more initial sense, because it is incredibly slow, but it also compensates for this with solid bulk, as well as several great abilities for defensive use. Rough Skin punishing contact moves, Mold Breaker allowing it to Stealth Rock even against opposing Pokemon with the Magic Bounce ability, yet it can't quite bring these together as well as competitors with similar traits, like Garchomp and Excadrill. Haxorus, on the other hand, has a perfectly solid speed. It's much faster than Dragonite, for instance, and isn't exactly frail either. It's even assisted by having mono dragon typing, meaning it doesn't automatically fall over against weaker ice moves like Hidden Power Ice the way Dragonite, Salamence, and Garchomp often do without assistance from a Yacht Berry. However, there's a reason Haxorus had already fallen off even during the Black and White 1, in which it initially made its name. There was no Kyurem Black to outclass it yet, but there was discontent with the way it struggled to safely switch into battle, and how much this lack of defensive utility impeded not just its placement on a team, but its ability to seal the deal with its offense. The quad Ice Weak Dragons, though more vulnerable in this regard and not as powerful as Haxorus, were more well-rounded, and the extra power in most cases not only couldn't outweigh the lack of utility it came with, but also tended to be overkill and thus not even really necessary. It may feel harsh to call Haxorus terrible, but it couldn't really hack it for more than a brief period, even at its very best. It had a brilliant flash, but under the flash was an emptiness. Now for another pair of much of a different kind, we have Komala and Spinda. Here's a pair of normal types that have likable designs, some wonderfully unique, thorough move pools, including notable moves that receive tremendous support from their excellent abilities, and yet they are, unfortunately, absolutely terrible. First, Komala. Its signature technique is to utilize Sleep Talk and Last Resort thanks to its comatose ability. It is functionally asleep, which allows it to Sleep Talk immediately and always call Last Resort, whose enormous 140 base power can only be used once all of its other moves have been as well. It's a synergistic combination boosted further by Komala's strong base 115 attack, making for a thoroughly unique, powerful choice bander. However, this alone does not make for a great move pool. After all, normal coverage is easily thwarted, but Komala has a lot going for it. In fact, it's usually not using Last Resort at all, as it can take advantage of that great attack stat a lot more consistently through the immense variety of its move pool. It boosts to dangerous levels rapidly with Swords Dance, then in addition to its requisite normal stat, it's got pretty much every supplementary coverage option you could ask for. It will smash through steels and rocks with Superpower or Earthquake. Gen 9 gave it an always valuable ice option in Ice Spinner, and it's even got the outstanding priority of Sucker Punch to pair up with its low speed. It also has other solid options. It can Wood Hammer its way through certain bulky grounds like the Swords Dance ignoring Underwear Quagsire. It can play rough fighting types on the switch. It can wield the general excellence of Knockoff. All these moves mean it can drop Swords Dance and go for the more immediate boosting of Choice Band, and on top of this, it's a physical attacker that can't be status at all thanks to Comatose, so it can do things like switch into Scalds and Thunder Waves. Speaking of Knockoff though, Komala also has an amazing support move pool. In addition to item removal and the ever useful pivoting of U-turn, it also seems like an entirely different kind of Pokemon with Wish to heal both itself and its teammates, and even the entry hazard clearing of Rapid Spin. These four moves are so loaded with utility, they seem impossible to go wrong with, and yet Komala is absolutely useless. Its offense isn't going anywhere, not just because normal is so flawed as stab, but because it's got base 65 speed and barely any bulk to speak of either. And said lack of bulk and speed is going to ensure it's not pulling off its utility moves either. Absolutely tremendous in tandem though they should be, they just demand a base level of competence even Komala sadly cannot match. Second, we have to question how drunk was Spinda actually. It's got one of the best tools in the game. It gets to wield Superpower not as a move of diminishing returns with its attack and defense drop upon each use, but effectively as a built-in bulk up, as it has one of the best abilities in the game, Contrary, which means Superpower is actually boosting its attack and defense with each use. This is an absolutely amazing offensive weapon to have, especially since Contrary also means any attempt to intimidate it will also become an attack boost, but this too also does not make a great move pool on its own. However, Spinda also boasted a great many tools with which to push its Contrary Superpower further. Okay, it didn't exactly have much of anything to really threaten Ghost types on the Switch, but that was also the case for plenty of good Pokemon, and you'd make that flaw of theirs work if they could do their job against pretty much everything else. And move pool wise, it looked like Spinda could do that nicely with a boost or two in tow. Ice Punch's coverage gelled with Superpowers wonderfully, while Spinda had two excellent forms of priority. Once again, Sucker Punch, as well as Fake Out, Stab Fake Out even, for potential utility in VGC. Meanwhile, in singles, Spinda also recalled Komala with the potential utility of Rapid Spin and Wish, and even Last Resort, though that was more specific, but Spinda could also go further with support in Helping Hand for doubles or Trick for singles, unloading a hindering item onto an opponent. This would theoretically be great on Choice Band, since you could either spam banded Contrary Superpowers that got real strong real fast, or you could boost with more flexibility to your other moves after compromising an opposing wall with the Trick. The thing is, this really was theoretical, because the theory ended as soon as you looked at Spinda's utterly appalling stat spread. Yes, base 60 in every stat is funny, because it adds up to a base stat total of 360, and Spinda spins around in circles, haha, but well, if Glalie is mediocre with base 80 across the board, and an actually useful stab type, Spinda is downright desolate, even if Contrary Superpower is one of the most easy to click moves in the game. Now to finish things off, we've got a Gen 2 Pokemon focused on several of the most valuable moves of all, Fortress. Now Fortress hasn't always been terrible, though even its good generations, 2 through 5, eventually saw its reputation at least questioned, if not falling off almost entirely. There's not being what you once were in the new generations, options, and then there's not being what you once were at all. Despite having one of the best support move pools imaginable, even at its best, in its debut Gen 2, it undeniably plays second fiddle to Cloyster, and already has the problem that would follow it everywhere else, which is that it struggles to deliver on its many amazing moves. Spikes and Rapid Spin on the same Pokemon is rare, packing incredible value for being able to compress such superb utility into one move slot. And in Gen 2, Fortress could also run Spikes, Rapid Spin, and Explosion on the same set, unlike Cloyster, which had to choose between Spin and Boom. It could starting in Gen 3, but there Fortress eclipsed it with far more robust typing. Explosion alongside a respectable attack stat was a major part of Fortress's move pool in Gens 2 through 4, when the move still had its defense having effect and thus was effectively around 500 base power, taking out most neutral targets and dealing quite a fair chunk even to resist. It ensured Fortress wasn't just a passive wall, but could be quite punishing to the many Pokemon it took hits from once it had completed its utility duties or had fallen low on health. Even outside of Boom though, Fortress was always deceptively adept at hitting back. While no offensive Juggernaut, it had just the right move pool to ensure it wasn't feeding the opponent endless free switches or setup opportunities. Stab Hidden Power Bug was an effective tool to make sure Starmie couldn't freely Rapid Spin on it in Gens 2 and 3, as well as Claydol in the latter. It also flirted with Hidden Power Ghosts to hit these, as well as Gengar and Mischievous attempting to block its Rapid Spin. It can no longer use these physical hidden powers in Gen 4, but gain actual Steel Stab, weaponizing its non-existent speed with Gyro Ball, as well as a new anti-ghost move in Payback. Explosion and Payback were both nerfed beyond Fortress's capability to use them in Gen 5, but there it also gained arguably an even greater weapon, Volt Switch, giving it an amazing pivoting option, often alongside special hidden power. Yes, despite its poor special attack, Fortress made superb use of hidden power ice to thwart Gliscor, Landorus, and a variety of dragons. Everything got hidden power, but not many Pokemon could use it effectively. In Gen 2, Fortress sometimes even used hidden power fire for none other than opposing Fortress, and could unleash even more special attacking with Giga Drain to hit Cloyster and Golem. Starting in Gen 3, Fortress could also utilize the ever-reliable Earthquake. So yeah, it really was overloaded with options with which to directly thwart opponents alongside its primary function, the support of Spikes and Rapid Spin, and that's before considering Gen 4, which saw it gain even more in the hazard department with Stealth Rock and Toxic Spikes, making it the ultimate hazard Pokemon. Packing all three hazards and Rapid Spins is simply incredible. Rapid Spin alone was enough to ensure Fortress wasn't outclassed when Fortress came along in Gen 5. So why is Fortress on this list? Yes, it officially fell off in Gen 6 when Defog was buffed, but its moves were still incredibly valuable. There were still plenty of Spikes and Rapid Spin even in the Defog age, to the point of being metagame defining. So why did Fortress fall out of OU at this point? It was actually for the same reasons that it fell off these early gens. As great as the moves were, they weren't enough to overcome the fundamental problem of simply being Fortress. Part of the problem is that it wants too many of its excellent moves at once, but that's not the real deal breaker, because when that's not a problem, Fortress still struggles to keep up. It's not because of the usual suspects for this kind of thing either. It doesn't have poor typing, since Bug Steel is excellent defensively, as repeatedly demonstrated by Scizor, and it's not lacking in bulk either. It's got the same defense as Skarmory with significantly more HP, and though its special defense is lower with EV investment, it was still regularly able, even expected, to take special hits, even in something as high octane as the Draco Meteor laden Gen 4 Uber's metagame. So what's the problem? Well, for all its great moves, it lacks recovery. Unlike its points of comparison, Skarmory and Scizor both roosted, and while Ferrothorn doesn't have reliable recovery, it doesn't have Leech Seed, which doesn't just help with recovery, but also poses an offensive threat. Fortress has tried to get around its lack of recovery with tactics like Protect and Pain Split, but with only decent results at best, especially since its lack of recovery is exacerbated by such low speed. Still, even this isn't a deal breaker. Look at some contemporaneous defensive Pokemon like Bronzong and Swampert, which have these same flaws. No, Fortress's real issue was that a large part of its value came from Rapid Spin, which became increasingly unreliable as metagames evolved to be more and more hazard focused. Fortress didn't just struggle into Ghost, but struggled to stay healthy over the course of a longer game, meaning even without a Ghost, you could wear it down and maintain your hazards. This kind of problem was why across many generations, teams decided rather than try to reactively remove opposing spikes, they'd simply stack as many spike immune Pokemon, considering the alternative was going through the excruciating, inconsistent song and dance of trying to get around the Ghost with Pursuit Tyranitar. Yes, Rapid Spin was still good, but now you had to be a good overall Pokemon to use it, like Starmie and Excadrill. Fortress was a Pokemon that had been good because of Rapid Spin, not a good Pokemon with Rapid Spin, and when it wasn't spinning, it wasn't doing much else. It fell into the dreaded trap of passiveness. It wasn't a reliable exploder, with how many normal resists its face, to say nothing of Ghosts and their immunity, and its other moves really needed to roll a good matchup in order to overcome their and Fortress's low power. Even the pivoting of Volt Switch could only go so far. It got some genuinely good offensive options in Gen 9 that would have really been appreciated earlier. The power and coverage of Body Press and Ice Spinner would have been tremendous, but at that point, it was just too late. And thank you so much to our platinum patrons. Thank you to Alex Sable, Anthony Belval Renault, Daniel Isbeast, Corman, Don Creek, Eric Dissing, Espion Lover, Funky, Glitcherton, Howl, Jack G, King Yabber, Nightfall, Megamon VGC, Mojo Gameslayer, Nurse Jake, One Penguin to Rule, Pretzel SP, Palamute, Plutonian Shores, Schmooter, Seagulls Incorporated, Soljiro Sakura, Spavoon, Skylaria, Soros and Croxon, Shiwei Miji, Stoneface Colin, Tyler, Kiboflu, Wardeen, Zachary Stimson, Zathor, for their major support of our videos.